Today we are installing the B&M Unimatic Shifter. This is an automatic shifter for 3 or 4-speed automatic transmissions. And we're putting in my 65 C-10 that is LS swapped. It has a 4L60E transmission. So follow along as we get this done. Here's what's in the box. You've got your shifter, a shifter boot, lots of different hardware, ton of different brackets, and of course a shifter cable and some instructions. So the first thing our instructions say to do is to remove all of the old linkage. That's actually not what I'm going to do first. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to skip to step 2. It says determine where you want to put the shifter and make sure that you have 2.5 inches of clearance below the floor of the shifter for the shifter and cable clearance. So of course we're going to install it on the transmission tunnel right above the transmission. So I need to make sure that I got 2.5 inches between the tunnel and the transmission. So we're going to check that first before we take any of the old shifter linkage off. That looks pretty tight. I don't know that I have 2.5 inches. I'm a little confused as to what the previous owner did here. I'm not sure why there appears to be 2 transmission mounts. You've got this one that's a metal pipe with a bracket welded to it, and then you have this, which is welded, cut and welded, and then cut and welded again, and some other stuff. I don't know, but I'm going to take it off and replace it with one that should work a whole lot better. The bolts are out of this transmission cross member. I've used a jack to push the transmission up as far as it will go. It is literally up against the transmission tunnel, and the cross member will not come out. That is because it appears like he put this round cross member in first. It is stuck on the other side of the transmission mount. Then he put this other cross member in because I guess he decided the round one wasn't strong enough, and it does not look like it probably was not. And so then he put this one in and welded it right up here-ish to the round cross member. It looks like I'm going to have to try and get a wrench up in there and take the 2 bolts out for the transmission mount and slide it out with the transmission mount, just kind of sitting on top of the mount. Because, yeah, this is stuck on the other side of the mount. All right, well, all right, there's the old transmission cross something or other. Here's our new one, which is going in now. I tried to put it in with it completely put together, and that didn't work, so I had to take it apart a little bit. Anyways, this is a Doug's transmission cross member. It was on super sale clearance at Jegs or Summit or one of those, so that's kind of why I ordered it. Plus, it should make it really easy to put some exhaust on it. The exhaust comes right through there. All right, there is our new transmission cross member. There's a little spacer plate that goes in there in between the transmission mount and the cross member. I still need to put the transmission down and put the 2 bolts in for that. Whole lot more room under here now with this cross member. A little tip: if you get one of these, see all of those bolts, all of these bolts, yeah, leave them all loose until you get it in and get the bolts in the frame, and then tighten everything up. It'll make things a lot easier and save you some time. Okay, our cross member is complete, bolted in. Now it's time to work on that shifter a little bit before we put some exhaust on here. We're going to start by taking this off. With the stock shifter bracket off, we are going to install this bracket We're going to use these bolts, these two spacers, and we're going to install this piece for the cable. Now I should probably take the old one off, the old bracket off that's on there, but it is bolted to the top of the transmission. So I'm going to see if I can just leave it. It's not hurting anything. If it's in the way, then I'll deal with it then. Okay, these two brackets, pretty easy to put on. It's got 2 bolts there, and it comes with new bolts, so make sure you use the spacer and the new bolts. And then this piece here, you're reusing the nut there. Nothing to it. This is the old bracket. I'm just going to leave it there. I think it might be in the way a little bit, but when I run the new cable, it has to loop and into here. So I might just bend this out a little bit so I can reuse the hole that's in here, kind of help hold the cable in. I know we're in the middle of installing exhaust, putting a shifter on, we just put a transmission cross member in, and now I'm switching up yet again. It's time to paint this floor with some micro balloons. But first, let me get rid of some of this dirt. Should have worn a mask. See this wire here that goes through that seat hole and back over through here and through the firewall? That's the power lead for the fuel pump. We're just going to go ahead and cut that. We're going to rerun this under the chuck instead of through it for no particular reason. And now we clean. Time to give this a shot. Probably don't want to breathe these in. These are micro balloons. And I'm just guessing here, so I'm going to do a 50-50 mix on this. Again, definitely trying not to breathe this in. Alright, we got about a half a cup in there. This is some old Rust-Oleum flat black that came with a project car, believe it or not. I've had it kicking around for years. Never opened it. Micro balloons went right to the top. Let's see if we can mix this up. See what kind of texture we got there. Now I'm going to spray it through a texture gun. A little bit more paint. I should really be wearing gloves. I suck. So if you're doing this at home, make sure you put some gloves on or something. Alright, that's the second batch. I went through the first batch pretty quick. You can see what it looks like. That's going to end up being flat black because I'm using flat black. But I still need to spray the back, spray the other side. But yeah, this thing puts out some product. Here is the final result. Well, not final because it still hasn't dried. Yeah, I think it looks okay. It looks a little bit like a bed liner, which is what I was expecting. I'm planning on putting the rubber mat back in this truck, so that'll be on top of this. But this is supposed to improve the sound deadening capabilities. You've probably heard of that is it reptile skin or lizard skin or something. This is kind of the poor man's version of that. You can just buy those micro balloons off of Amazon and mix it with the paint and spray it on with a texture sprayer is what I use. I guess you use an undercoat gun as well. That's that. We'll let that dry, and when the shifter stand should be in tomorrow, then we can get back to work on the shifter install and then back on the exhaust. You see how I tied that all together? And that's why we're doing it in the way that we're doing it, because it makes the most amount of sense. Right. Check it out. It is the next day. Our paint has dried, and it looks pretty good, doesn't it? The shifter stand has arrived, and people, let me tell you, when you're selling something on eBay, how about just putting the measurements down instead of stupid photos of your tape measure? I went back and looked at it, and this dude's, and he was the only one that actually even had measurements. This thing is 2.5 inches across. The photo clearly showed it being closer to 3. So just put the measurements down. That'll be so much easier for everyone involved. Yeah, it's going to be a little close. I've got to cut this hole out, and then we need to drill some holes. And these holes, These holes are right at the edge. In fact, they're probably maybe a little over the edge, but I'm not going to worry about that because I'm going to put the shifter in here, and if I have to slot the shifter a little bit, that's what I'm going to do. When I tell you that this was the only shifter stand that really looked like it would work, it's the only one. But I should have just made my own. You know, hindsight's 20/20. That's what I should have done. But time, money, I mean, this thing was pretty cheap, and I didn't have to do anything, but well, we got a couple guide holes, and then a big hole for our airfoil. I am really at a loss as to why B&M said the hole needs to be that big. Okay, it's going to look something like that. I just need to get some paint on it because that is bare metal. This is where the shifter is going to end up. Got to drill a hole kind of through this hump for our cable to go through. Well, we're waiting for the paint to dry. I've gone ahead and put our cable on and tightened it down. Still have to install this little clip right here. Yep, that's a two-hand job. Ah, no, got it with one hand. I hear some of you chuckling. Next up, we'll install this into the shifter stand and bolt it in. Then we will feed this cable through that hole that I just drilled. All right, here's our shifter installed on the shifter stand. The shifter stand just kind of sitting in place. You can see the cable just kind of goes through the hole. Then I'm going to bolt that down to the tunnel there. I need to order the rubber mat. So I've got the driver's side exhaust kind of mocked up. This side has a nice piece of angle iron on the frame that I was able to bolt that hanger to. The other side does not have that piece of angle iron. So, time to make something. So if you want some cheap angle iron, old bed frames. You can pick them up real inexpensive, and it's a lot of nice metal that you can use for, well, crap like brackets. So talk about feeling like an idiot. I was welding that new exhaust bracket on here, and I thought I caught myself on fire. Yeah, I felt this spreading down my leg, and I was like, oh my god, I must be on fire. What else could it be? Well, yeah, I knocked over a bottle of water. Pants are soaked. Bracket's done. So after getting the exhaust done on the truck, fired it up to hear what it sounded like, and got transmission fluid everywhere. Got cardboard down to soak it up. Turns out the stock cooler that came with this thing was junk, so now I have to redo that and use the cooler that's built in. But I was trying to figure out what lines it needed, and well, turns out it uses these things. They're called G4s or G8s, or I'll look it up and link it. But yeah, so these cheap aftermarket radiators, they don't use your standard connector on them. And when you look in the notes on Amazon, it tells you what size it is, but it looks like gobbledygook, and turns out it's not. It's actually something that exists. They use them for computer cooling, which is kind of odd. I already put one on, and it screwed right in, so we're going to get this one in here. And then we'll use some 3/8 hose. Okay, with our floor mat installed, shifter in place, it is finally time to hook up the shifter underneath. Which of course means putting all of these back onto the cable in the correct order. Which hopefully I remember. It's actually been few weeks now. Ignore the cardboard box. Just had a little bit of a transmission fluid spill. We're going to put one of the nuts on. I'm just going to go about halfway, and then we're going to slip one of the washers on. Now we're going to go into the first bracket, and once we go into that bracket, we will then put the next washer and the next nut on. And we're just going to leave it loose until we figure out where we need it to be. So you can see I still have the old bracket on here from the whatever vehicle this came out of. And And it's not doing anything other than kind of acting as a guide. Here, the transmission cross member to keep it away from the exhaust and to keep it away from the drive shaft, but that's neither here nor there. So we've got this here, and we are going into the first hole. We definitely need to bring this back. Need to bring that back quite a bit more. That's our piece that goes on here. Needs to go in this front hole. Now we're going to put the other washer and nut on, and then tighten that up. We have our other nut and washer on. I still need to tighten this down. Then I put our boot on here, and then we have another boot here that I also put on. And so next we need to put the little piece on here, and we're just going to spin it around until it drops right into place on this first hole, and then we'll pin it in with a cotter pin. Here is the linkage all set up. Time to see if it works. Well, it works. Alright, shifter's done, floor mat's done. Our exhaust is, well, mostly done. Radiator's installed. So that's pretty much it for this installment. In the next installment, we'll fill up the radiator, hook up the transmission lines that have failed. So we'll fix that. And we're gonna get into wiring. We've got to wire up taillights and that sort of thing because it doesn't really have a wiring harness. We'll also have to figure out the cooling fan, maybe the hookup for the OBD2. I haven't seen that anywhere, so I'm not sure that it has one. Anyways, like, subscribe, comment. I'll see y'all down the road, just hopefully not on the side of it.